The years following World War II were supposed to be a time of peace, a time of prosperity, a time of relief. The world had just emerged from the most destructive conflict in human history. American soldiers were coming home. Factories that had built tanks and planes were now building automobiles and refrigerators. It seemed for a moment that the nation could finally catch its breath. But beneath the surface, a deep and unsettling anxiety began to fester. A new kind of war was beginning, a Cold War. Not of hot lead and roaring engines, but of shadows and whispers. Ideologies clashed in the dark corners of the globe. It pitted the United States and its democratic allies against the Soviet Union and the spread of communism. The world was split in two. An iron curtain, as Churchill called it, had descended across Europe. Joseph McCarthy was not at first a figure of national importance. He was a junior senator from Wisconsin, elected in 1946. His early years in the Senate were largely unremarkable. He was searching for an issue that would propel him into the spotlight. He found it on a February day in 1950 in Wheeling, West Virginia. Speaking to a Republican women's club, McCarthy held up a piece of paper. He declared that he had in his hand a list of 205 names. A list of individuals known to the Secretary of State as being members of the Communist Party, who were nevertheless still working and shaping policy in the State Department. The accusation was explosive. It was shocking. It was also a lie. There was no list. 205, 57, 81. It did not matter. The charge struck a chord with a public primed for fear. McCarthy had discovered a powerful political weapon, the unsubstantiated accusation. He understood the media landscape of his time. He knew a bold headline travels further than a quiet retraction. He repeated his claims, growing bolder with each press conference, each interview. He was a master of the smear, the insinuation, the public charge that forced the accused to prove a negative. McCarthy's tactics were simple but brutally effective. He called witnesses before his Senate subcommittee, the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. These hearings were not about finding the truth. They were public spectacles, modern-day witch trials, broadcast on the new and powerful medium of television. McCarthy bullied and berated witnesses. He interrupted them, twisted their words, questioned their patriotism. He used phrases like "I have in my hand" to suggest proof. But the evidence was rarely, if ever, produced. His power was not facts, but the performance of certainty. He played the fearless patriot, the lone warrior, fighting a secret war against traitors. For a time, it worked brilliantly. McCarthy became one of the most powerful men in America. To challenge him was to risk being labeled a communist sympathizer. He fed on the nation's fear, and the nation in turn gave him immense power. He presented a simple narrative: America was good. Communism was evil. He was the man to purge the evil from the land. He offered no nuance, no complexity, only suspicion, and the cold comfort of a scapegoat. The press at first amplified his message without scrutiny. The name McCarthyism soon became synonymous with political persecution. McCarthyism did not emerge from a vacuum. It was the fever pitch of the Second Red Scare, a period of intense anti-communist suspicion in the late 1940s and 1950s. But this was not the first time America had succumbed to such a panic. The first Red Scare had erupted decades earlier, in the wake of World War I and the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. From 1919 to 1920, a similar wave of fear swept the nation. Anarchist bombings, labor strikes, were seen not as domestic issues, but as the leading edge of a worldwide communist revolution. Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer launched the Palmer Raids, targeting suspected radicals, anarchists, immigrants. Thousands were arrested, often without warrants, and held in deplorable conditions. Hundreds were deported with little regard for due process. Labor unions, like the IWW, were branded radical and brutally suppressed. As in the McCarthy era, fear justified the erosion of civil liberties. The first Red Scare burned out, but suspicion smoldered. The second Red Scare was longer and more pervasive, fueled by the nuclear arms race, the fall of China, and the Korean War. The threat felt immediate, existential. The hunt was institutionalized. Executive Order 9835 created loyalty review boards for federal employees. Both Red Scares show how fear is weaponized to silence dissent, target minorities, enforce a narrow patriotism. The parallels are chilling, warnings for the future. Watching the events of the McCarthy era unfold, one cannot help but ask a series of troubling questions that echo into our present moment. Are we on the verge of a new Red Scare today? The enemy may have a different name, It might be socialist, globalist, or some other label designed to stoke division. But the tactics feel unnervingly familiar. We see the spread of unsubstantiated claims on social media, the public shaming of individuals for their opinions, and the branding of political opponents as enemies of the state. The technology has changed, but the human impulse to demonize and divide remains dangerously constant. The speed and reach of the internet allow modern-day hysterias to ignite and spread faster than ever before. Where is common sense in our politics? During McCarthy's reign, basic principles of justice were cast aside. Today, we often see a similar abandonment of reason in public discourse. Complex issues are reduced to angry slogans. Evidence and expertise are dismissed. Common sense requires listening, questioning assumptions, and rejecting simplistic answers. Why are so many politicians silent? What are they afraid of? Political consequences. Being targeted, losing elections, the wrath of a vocal base. When good people stay silent, they become complicit, and demagoguery thrives. In the midst of the McCarthy era's suffocating conformity, a powerful voice of artistic dissent emerged. The playwright Arthur Miller watched HUAC with growing horror. He saw friends forced to choose between their principles and their livelihoods. To comment directly was dangerous, so Miller reached back to the Salem witch trials of 1692. The result was The Crucible, premiered in 1953. On its surface, a village torn apart by accusations of witchcraft. Young girls caught dancing, point fingers to save themselves. Paranoia engulfs the town. Audiences recognized rigid dogma as a stand-in for rigid anti-communism. Spectral evidence, what no one could see or verify, mirrored unsubstantiated lists and secret accusations brandished by McCarthy. The Crucible shows how grudges and anxieties gain deadly power and fear. Abigail exploits hysteria. Officials like Danforth, invested in the process, refuse to admit error, even before overwhelming proof. John Proctor stands for individual conscience, imperfect, but unwilling to lend his name to a lie. Because it is my name, because I cannot have another in my life. Miller challenged those naming names and honored those who refused, a timeless warning about integrity in a time of moral collapse. Why do societies embrace mass suspicion? What is the psychological engine behind Salem and McCarthyism? The answer lies in our need for order, certainty, belonging. Faced with complex threats, hidden devils, global conspiracies, Cold War dread, the mind craves simple explanations. It is unsettling to accept chaos and limited control. Conspiracy theories offer comfort, a clear narrative, a secret group to blame. If we can identify and purge them, order will be restored. That promise is intoxicating, however false. Under stress, societies seek scapegoats. Targets are portrayed as alien, immoral, fundamentally different. During the Red Scare, communists were dehumanized as godless agents bent on destroying American life. Dehumanization eases the suspension of empathy and justice. When labeled existential threats, any action feels justified. In-group versus out-group pressure intensifies. Questioning risks exile. Accusing signals loyalty and deflects suspicion. It grants agency and the thrill of righteousness, blinding many to the cruelty they commit. McCarthyism was not fleeting. It dominated for years. It held up a mirror to national vulnerabilities and contradictions, the fragility of democratic ideals. A nation of liberty is not immune to authoritarian appeal, especially under stress. Checks and balances can fail. When fear overwhelms reason and courage evaporates. What does it say that we allowed this to happen? Fear of an external enemy can make people sacrifice the freedoms that define them. In fighting tyranny abroad, we embrace tyranny at home. Censorship, blacklisting, loyalty oaths, show trials. It revealed insecurity about democracy's resilience and strength. The media amplified McCarthy early, captivated by drama and headlines. Only later did journalists like Edward R. Murrow challenge him, turning the tide. A free press must hold power accountable, scrutinize claims, provide context. A lesson as vital now as then. Democracy is not permanent, it is a constant struggle. It requires informed citizens, courageous leadership, and resilient commitment to core principles. "It can't happen here" is a dangerous illusion. The mechanisms of fear, division, and demagoguery are timeless. Like all fevers, the fever of McCarthyism eventually broke. His fatal mistake was attacking the United States Army. For 36 days, the nation watched and saw a reckless bully. Until this moment, have you no sense of decency, sir, at long last? Have you left no sense of decency? In that moment, the spell was broken. The emperor had no clothes. McCarthy's power evaporated, his colleagues now acted. In December 1954, the Senate censured him. Stripped of influence, he faded, dying in 1957, a marginalized figure. Demagoguery withers under public scrutiny. Courage matters. Journalists and lawyers willing to speak truth to power. Fear is a political tool. Patriotism can be weaponized. A society that abandons principles in the name of security may lose both. Today's polarization and digital misinformation pose the same test. Are we on the verge of such an event again? Where has common sense gone? Why won't our politicians stand up? What are they afraid of, and how can they tolerate this? We must ask ourselves, have we truly learned, or have we just forgotten?